Live from the mighty Veedverks airship, I'm Travis Lippert, CEO of Verks Unlimited Limited, better known as Veedverks.
And I'm Julie Richardson, Director of Commercialization and Promotions.
And we have with us, we'll do intros right off the bat. We have with us people that are trying to get mushrooms legalized in Denver. And we're going to talk about that in great depth today, I think. So, Tyler, will you start?
Yeah, I'd love to volunteer to go first. I'm Tyler, and I guess I am just a volunteer for the Denver Psilocybin Initiative and, Decriminalize Denver campaign.
I'm Alayna, and I'm not necessarily affiliated with the campaign, but I've just been, involved in all the efforts to educate and kind of spread awareness and normalization about all of plant medicine, and this go around is about psilocybin.
So psilocybin is not really a plant, right? Because
it's an active ingredient in psilocybin mushrooms.
So all life is divided into three major categories. Archaea and bacteria and eukarya. And archaea and bacteria are single-celled organisms that have no cell nucleus, and eukarya it's all life that has a membrane-enrobed organelles in it and a cell nucleus that has genetic information in it, and all multicellular life. So basically everything that we really see as life is eukarya, and that has 5 kingdoms in it. It's chromista and protista, and plants and animals and fungi, and fungi are like molds and yeasts and mushrooms. And there are mushrooms that are tasty, and there are mushrooms that will kill you, and there are mushrooms that are described as magic, and they made those illegal in 70 or 71. And so just like with cannabis, nobody's been able to research it, but that's changing now. And so you guys are going to have a ton of information for us. So welcome to the mighty Veedverks airship. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Really excited to be here. Really excited to talk about mushrooms, and especially the magic kind.
So the magic kind, there are specifically what was scheduled on Schedule 1 was psilocybin, right? Is that the...
Sounds right.
And so tell us about psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah, so psilocybin mushrooms are currently illegal. They're Schedule 1 substance, like you were saying, under the Controlled Substances Act. And Denver is trying to decriminalize them. They just received breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA, which is a pretty big deal. And so Denver is trying to make sure people who are trying to take care of themselves can grow their own, mm-hmm. and use their own and possess their own and not be considered a felon.
Are any mushrooms that are actually deadly illegal? Like, could you get busted for having a bunch of very poisonous mushrooms?
There are some. I believe there are even some that look like the psilocybin mushrooms. So when you are foraging and stuff, it's always good to have your guide, have some experts, if that's the way that you find them. There are definitely deadly ones. The psilocybin ones, I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard there's no overdoses from magic mushrooms.
Yeah, there's no lethal dose.
Yeah.
So, just like cannabis, it's one of the, substances that nobody's ever died from. So, yeah, there is a varietal that can kill you, but it's not psilocybin.
Yeah, is it the Amanita muscarius?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that there's like hundreds of different varieties of them that are magic, right? Something like that.
I'm actually not 1,000% sure.
Okay, cool. I know that there's like a lot of different ones, and I think they just discovered a new species of like psilocybin stamets, named after Paul Stamets. Do you guys know who that is?
No, tell us.
He's like a famous mycologist from like Washington or Oregon.
A mycologist is a mushroomologist. Is that what is that what that is?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm not totally sure what an ologist is, but
Me neither.
yeah, somebody who deals with like mycology.
From what state?
Oregon or Washington. He's in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not 100% sure.
And did he find the mushroom, or was it just named in his honor?
I'm pretty sure his buddy found them from so I think I saw him speak in Oregon at the solar eclipse gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling the story about he's from like a college town in either Oregon or Washington, and like the rival college town, his friend called him from there and said, hey, I found these new mushrooms, like, you know, we got to go check them out or whatever. And so they go down there, and it turns out that it's like on the campus police station ground where these mushrooms are actually growing, and he's out there with like a trash bag trying not to be like real sketchy or anything. And you know, they I guess took him back to the lab, and they were like a different species than had ever been discovered before. But he's got a really famous book on the different types of magic mushrooms. So Paul Stamets, if you don't already know.
When you say magic mushroom, what are you implying? What does that mean by magic? What are the different medicinal purposes people have been using?
So I think something about like the psilocybin or this other alkaloid baeocystin creates this kind of they call them entheogens, and it creates this almost like spiritual experience, and it's an altering of perception of reality, you know, not unlike getting drunk or getting high on cannabis or something, but it's like a very like psychedelic kind of like it's so hard to describe, you know.
Many people describe it as a religious experience, and that's the closest thing that I've ever had to having religion of any sort, was the first time I took mushrooms, and I just something clicked. I was like, wow, I don't know, I learned something about the universe that I haven't forgotten since.
Yep, that was my exact experience. So the very first time I tried was, you know, just in college, like when you're like trying all these things, and like I was not educated about any of it. I was just like trying it with friends, and it was insane because I had never experienced anything like that in my life. And I literally felt my brain operating in ways that it wasn't operating before. And I could feel parts of my brain activating that I could tell I was not tapped into prior to that. So it's as if, you know, my brain was communicating and working in a way that I just hadn't tapped into before. And so I knew right away that that was something very awakening and something very telling about this substance, about this plant. And that's what really started my passion about trying to understand it more and like learn more about it, because I had this personal experience, but I didn't have any knowledge to back up why I was having it and what it all meant. And plus I was also told my whole life how bad these things were. So I'm sitting there being like, well, I'm having this incredible, positively life-changing experience with this thing that I've been told is dangerous and wrong and scary and all these things. So it just made me, that along with cannabis, that's what made me question like everything that we've ever been told about these substances. And that's what really started me down the rabbit hole of really, really studying this and becoming really passionate about, you know, consciousness and like our own ability to navigate our consciousness. You know, in reality, how are we really free when we don't even have the ability to navigate our own consciousness if we so choose with different substances and plants and things like that? Like it's crazy. We're really not free. You know, like we're told this substance is okay, but this one, if you're caught with that will send you to jail, and that's wrong and that's bad. And it's just like, wait a minute, something's really off here, and it's not based in logic, and it doesn't seem like it's based in science. So that's kind of what told me, okay, there's a certain money, greediness, profit thing that's driving all of these, you know, scheduling of these substances.
Yeah, they banned mushrooms that expand your mind, but they didn't ban the ones that you can kill yourself with.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's not logical.
No.
And it's not based in anything that's actually meant to protect us.
Yeah.
It's really just more about like control and, what's profitable.
Right. Well, what's interesting is, there's also something called microdosing.
Yeah.
And that's what I had a really good friend of mine introduce me to that. I have issues with fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just get so tired. I wouldn't want to do anything on the weekends. I would feel upset about it, And so they gave me very micro doses of this on the weekends, and I had energy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to the dark place where, I'm like the self-loathe, like I need to get up and clean my house and that sort of thing. And it really made a huge difference, but I didn't feel like I was in an altered state at all. It was like all of a sudden.
I know what you mean by that. Yeah.
It was like it was almost like I had a power shortage and somebody fixed it, replaced my wiring or something, because I was plugged back in.
Yeah.
If that makes
Totally.
sense. I had the energy and the mental clarity to get up and do what I needed to do. And, so that's been my experience with it so far. And, I would rather do that than take the pharmaceuticals that I've been prescribed. This morning, it just so happened there were 3 different depression commercials.
Yeah.
All right. These the side effects were horrible, suicidal thoughts and tendency. Wait a minute, this is for depression. We're trying to prevent this. Cases of rage, and all of these horrible, really mind-altering, side effects from what's safe.
Yeah.
I need to be able to choose what's safe and right in this body.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's definitely an important piece too about like talking with your doctors and stuff, because it turns out we've seen a lot of interest from therapists and mental health professionals, and they're not willing to risk their licenses over it, so I'm not going to like name any names or anything, but there is a realization that this is very effective. That FDA breakthrough status is very important. Some of the studies that have been coming out of Johns Hopkins and things, there's a company that's like a $1 billion company, I want to say, forming around this idea of psilocybin and these like magic mushrooms, and it's really interesting to see what all happens, and I really hope if they do make it like a pharmaceutical synthetic, they don't go the way of Marinol with like the 500 milligrams, and it's more of the microdose model of just a little bit.
Well, I mean, the synthetic, people can't talk today. People are having reactions from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marinol, like negative reactions.
Yeah, horrible reactions.
So there's always
just let them have cannabis, for corn's sake.
Right.
Just
Yeah, totally. And some people do definitely need the 500 milligrams, or just like some people probably need the heroic doses.
Mm-hmm.
But it's these things are have risks and everything, and it's definitely important, the education too that's going on around it. So I just love that we can get together and have these conversations, especially going on the air with it.
There's always going to be some form of potential negative side effects when you're synthesizing something, especially for the first time, if it hasn't been done and hasn't been around for enough years for you to have a lot of data and knowledge about like long-term effects. So but there's a total place for it. It's just something that we need to go into really educated and really I think careful. I'm a big proponent of just like whole plant and connecting more closely to nature rather than the synthesized version. But I'm also not against the synthesized version. I do see that there's a purpose and a place for things like that too. Yeah. It's the same idea as isolating compounds, where typically we talk about this nice synergistic effect and efficiency of the entourage effect of compounds, but there's totally a place where we isolate it, learn what that isolated compound does, and then learn what this isolated compound does when you combine it with this one. So it's really interesting in science and research to be able to isolate and empower ourselves with that knowledge, and then be able to really cater it specifically to what our needs are.
That would be a really cool like cannabis research if they started putting some of those like isolates back together,
Totally.
like seeing what kind of disorders they really.
That's how, when I picture the future of medicine and what like my hopes and dreams are, that's how I picture it.
Nice.
Of like, I always think of the periodic table, and I think of like all the cannabinoids in the periodic table and being able to like perfectly select each one for like every situation that you have going
Periodic
on.
table of cannabinoids.
Yeah, a periodic table of cannabinoids. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
So that
was
was
kind of interesting. I've never thought about it like that, but yeah.
As soon as I learned about cannabinoids, that was like the first image that I had in my head, and I was like, I really hope that that's the future.
That'd be super sweet.
Yeah.
And they're learning about mushrooms too. So like I said, a lot of people are familiar with psilocybin, but there's like this norbaeacystin, I think it's called, that the Denver Measure Initiative like accounts for. And I'm not sure if it's like the Amanita muscaris or if it's like a different type of psilocybin. Probably not, I guess, because those are named after the psilocybin. But these alkaloids and these things in the plant medicines and the fungal medicines, like that we are still very, very unaware of, and so it's just so cool that this is going on in the conversation. But yeah, can we talk a little bit about voting and
Yeah,
stuff
that's
real
what
quick?
I was just
Okay.
thinking. The
Cool.
reason for this whole show, is about Tuesday.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's coming up Tuesday. Everybody needs to get their ballots in, and May 7th by 7 p.m. Ballots, it's like too late to mail them in, so people who have got them mailed actually have to go drop them off at the ballot boxes. There's one right next to Civic Center Park, so wherever our listeners are listening from. Is it a lot of like Denver residents, or is it all?
Yeah, it's a lot of Canna fam.
It's a lot of Canna fam.
Some
it's,
Funga fam.
Yeah.
Funga fam.
Funga fam.
Some organizers?
Yes!
90% of it in Colorado. Haven't looked at the stats in a couple of weeks, but yeah, mainly Colorado. But we're branching out.
I'm trying to share it around and stuff. My phone's just so dumb.
So if you are registered to vote in Denver County, make sure you're voting yes on 301.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the language of 301 is, shall the voters of the city and county of Denver adopt an ordinance to the Denver Revised Municipal Code that would make the personal use and personal possession of psilocybin mushrooms by persons 21 years of age or older the city's lowest law enforcement priority, prohibit the city from spending resources to impose criminal penalties for the personal use and personal possession of psilocybin mushrooms by persons 21 years of age and older, and establish the psilocybin mushroom policy review panel to assess and report on the effects of the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
That is the question, and you should say yes.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Yes. So if you look at the stats of who actually has been going to jail for psilocybin in Denver, I believe it's like 1% of like the drug crimes is psilocybin. It's very, very small. So it's interesting with this because it's not like we're doing anything really dramatic here, in my opinion. It's just we're decriminalizing it and making it so it's an even less priority. We're not spending resources on it. We're feeling like, yes, if somebody gets caught with magic mushrooms, they're not just gonna go straight to jail. We're just making it a very low priority for law enforcement. Should somebody 21 or older have possession, or they're using it or growing it themselves, we feel like they should not go to jail for that. So that's really all it is. It's not like this is legalization where it's going to mimic what we've done with cannabis. This is just one great step of decriminalizing and helping to free our ability to utilize these substances if we choose.
Yeah, I feel like that is kind of dramatic, though.
It is dramatic.
It's definitely not like a lot of people, but it could potentially be. It's like you were saying with the freedom piece. Like
yes.
it's like protecting our right to use these things, to possess these things, to grow these things, And it's dramatic.
That is dramatic. I should be more clear. And what I meant by that is that there was a lot of concern online. Like if you look at some of the comments people were making, and people were just kind of like losing their minds at the idea of this. And I guess I was just trying to say that when you look at how many people are currently going to jail for this, it is very small. I feel like all this is doing is just, further protecting that like 1%. It's just like a further step of protection for our own rights, for our own conscious rights and our own conscious freedom. So that's the part I was minimalizing, not that this, because this really is a huge thing. That part is for sure dramatic. I just mean that by decriminalizing, it's not like, we're regulating
a bunch of money.
Yeah, we're not like, it's not dramatic in the fact that like, oh my gosh, now like all these people are gonna move here and be like selling mushrooms, and it's like, well, selling it is still illegal. This is just protecting you using it and cultivating it yourself if you so choose.
Way too high in public is still illegal.
Right.
Like public impairment or something.
Right.
I don't know exactly what they call that, but it's definitely not toxic if nobody's dying from it, right?
Right. And so I just wanted to like put people's concerns to ease, that like, hey, this isn't
there aren't going to be mushroom dispensaries on the
corner. It's not going to be like that. And this decriminalizing is still not going, or like it's not stop, or it's going to stop people from selling and like being noticeably a disturbance or something like that. So
nothing like that's
going to change is what I meant.
Totally. Yeah, it's probably going to be like one of the best things to ever happen that nobody ever like really heard about.
Right.
Or saw the effects of, sort of thing.
Well, I was kind of disappointed that I'd heard some of the city's council speak, and one of them, who is thankfully being voted out, he's running for something else. He was like, "Oh, well, we need to regulate it and make sure it's safe." And it's like, it sounds like the cannabis nightmare, and all of that. Okay, do you want to regulate it because it's safe, or do you want to regulate it because it's a good tax?
Right.
Well, I think safety is definitely an important concern, because these things to have risks. I've heard of people not coming back from trips, and
that's what they always told us.
Yeah.
Like they told us a bunch of stuff in junior high that wasn't true, but some of it, not all of it was.
I don't know anybody personally, but I know people who know people personally, and I've heard some stories, and that stuff definitely just like does increase your concern, and there's definitely a lot of misinformation out there too, a lot of propaganda of people, and I think that happened more with LSD than with magic mushrooms, but there's still that stigma, and but it's so cool. Like I was canvassing, I think last night, talking to somebody who was just kept bringing up the microdosing thing, and it's like, like, why is that a felony? It's like you don't even feel any different. You're not really impaired, and like, I don't know.
It's like taking SAMe. You just have
taking what?
SAMe. It's a supplement. And it gives you the feeling of general wellness, kind of like taking CBD or St. John's wort. When you microdose, that's what you feel. It's just a general sense of wellness.
So we should talk about dosing and break these terminologies down. So like microdosing would be exactly what we're talking about, where you're not actually going into a state of like a trip necessarily. You're not necessarily getting, huge hallucinations, or
the paint's not peeling off the wall. Or...
How much do you think that would?
I believe it's it was just on Dosed. I don't know if you saw that. It was just on Dosed, and they broke it down. I want to say it was like 0.2 gram. That seems too low though.
I think you're right, because I think I've heard like even a half gram,
maybe a half
as like
of a gram,
the top end of it.
Yes.
And it's like sometimes hard to get like that little of a mushroom.
Right.
Too, I feel like. But
a lot of people are grinding them up and then putting them in tiny little capsules.
Yeah, that's how.
Does the capsule keep it from oxidizing pretty good?
I believe so. I mean, people are having success with it, so I believe so. But...
What happens when it oxidizes?
Just the potency lowers, and there's a lot of strains too. Just like with cannabis, some strains are really high percentage, like the penis envy are supposed to be like the strongest ones. They're like 3 times stronger, I think, than your average cubensis, which is kind of like the one that most people are familiar with. And then there's a bunch of different, variations. Even like I think Golden Teacher is like a type of cubensis, and there's a lot of I don't know. It's very.
I'm not.
complicated.
I'm not a
It's lot to
mycologist.
learn.
Yeah, so in that way, it is very similar to cannabis, where we have all these different strains, and they have different strengths, and they have their own different levels of their chemistry going on within them.
So that half gram's probably cubensis, right? Like the one that you might be able to find on the street most readily, sort of thing.
Probably, but honestly, I'm not as well versed in those minor details.
Okay, and then what's the next step from microdosing?
So I believe it's just called what would
Dosing?
yeah, I feel like it's something just like plain, standard, regular. I just can't think of like the proper terminology for it.
A good entheogenic experience.
Yeah. And that I believe was just 2 grams.
Okay.
And so it doesn't get to what they call a heroic dose until you're at 6 grams, I think it was.
Okay.
Does that sound about right?
I think so, because Terrence McKenna would talk about like 5 grams in silent darkness and like going real far out there.
So what happens what happens with that? You've taken 4.5 grams, you said, right?
Yeah, so I tried to do the Terrence McKenna thing, the silent darkness. It wasn't very silent.
Tell us what
or
that
dark.
is.
So they recommend kind of like an eye mask and earmuffs, and then just like lay down somewhere comfortable, and really like be introspective. Not so much look at the paintings and the trippy videos and the things like that. They say you can find all that stuff inside of you too, but that would probably be like paint peeling off of the walls, hearing like sound or hearing taste, and like smelling music or something.
Is that called synesthesia?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember what that's called, but yeah, when you can, that's a good way to describe it. Like you could smell sounds.
Right. Yeah. So the idea of like, covering your eyes, covering your ears, you're really tuning in, and it's kind of like those deprivation tanks where you're like eliminating certain senses, and you're really dropping into, you're just like raw essence, I feel like, very tuning in, and you can do a lot of healing in all these varying doses. So from a microdose to a heroic dose, there's plenty of healing that can be done, and addressing your root of why you do the things you do, the various traumas that are at the root of your behavior, and being able to work through that. So it's another similar way to cannabis is how, what's right for one person might not be right for the other person. And so one of my favorite things about this movement is bringing empowerment back to the people. We've been very disconnected to what's good for us and what to do. We seek out specialists for everything. Like, what should I eat? How should I exercise? What should I do? And it's like, really, we were the original, like, wisdom holders of these things. Like originally we didn't need to go to these specialists and ask them what to eat. We've just become very disconnected over time. And with the industrialization of our food, and with the rise of preservatives, and just the rise of us getting further and further away from nature, we've gotten very disconnected. So that's what I like about this movement is I think that we should kind of put the accountability back on ourselves. We should be responsible for ourselves, and we should figure out what's right for us. We should have the wisdom and know-how and empowerment to be like, I know that this dosage of cannabis is good for me, and this dosage is not suited for me, or I know that this dosage of mushrooms is good for me and this one's not so much. So I think it's a positive thing to bring empowerment back to the people. So obviously industries have a lot to gain for us not knowing what to do. That's why you have nutritionalists and all these specialists that have to tell you what to do. So obviously that's kind of what started our disconnection was an industry coming about and being like, you should do this and you should eat this, and
out of the cities back to the villages.
Yeah.
Well, there's some people in our community that are doing like meditation ceremonies and singing bowls and really, doing it with intention.
100%.
Not the microdose, but then I'm not sure if it's the
macro
hero,
dose or whatever
it is,
a regular dose.
But they're doing it very intentionally, and in doing it for whatever the healing is that person needs, and it's kind of guided meditation and very loving experience, and not only loving experience, from maybe you're doing it and you're giving love to me, but love within yourself.
100%. Yeah.
Was the reaction I got from it.
I'm glad you brought that up because so I just went to the Dosed premiere, and that was 2 nights ago. And the woman that they were
Tell us about Dosed. What's Dosed?
So they're following this woman, and she is a hardcore heroin addict, like every single day heroin, on the streets. Having to eventually switch to going to those methadone clinics, and she's needing it every single day in her system, and she's like super, super suicidal. And so they follow her throughout this whole journey. And originally they said, well, hey, have you tried microdosing mushrooms? Have you thought of psilocybin? And she's like, I haven't done that. So that was like the original direction they were going to go. And with her particular state, when your body is physically addicted to heroin, yes, the mushrooms can help you on a spiritual level, on a mental level, but it can't help your physical addiction to heroin. Right. And they had to kind of pivot the documentary, and it is a documentary about mushrooms and about psilocybin, but they pivoted a little bit and sent her to an ibogaine ceremony. And I don't know how much you know about ibogaine. This is another plant spirit medicine that's prohibited and like really illegal, but it is the one freaking plant in nature that can actually address opioid withdrawal and like heroin withdrawal. So like all the receptors that you have for opioids and how those just get destroyed from hardcore use. It's one of the only plants that can go in and heal that and stop the actual withdrawal. So first they did ibogaine so she could physically stop the withdrawal, and then she returned to the mushrooms, and she's now to this day sober and does not use any heroin, doesn't use any methadone, and it was from those 2 plant medicines, psilocybin mushrooms and ibogaine, 2 things that are currently very illegal, and they are exactly what cured her. And she's now speaking all over the country about it and is so healthy and so vibrant. She loves life. And when you were talking about love, that was the first big thing she said was when she took mushrooms, she was like, I realized that I love my cat and I treat my cat a certain way that I don't treat myself. She's like, I don't even love myself or care for myself the way I care for my cat. So she was saying that the root of a lot of her things were that she did not love herself at all. And she was constantly abusing herself and suppressing herself from feeling anything. And mushrooms are what gave her that self-love and what made her be able to feel again and be okay with those feelings rather than suppress them. She would sit and cry and, do whatever she needed to do to let that go. But she had decades of suppressing that with heroin. So she had, this long journey ahead of her to
and those things can kind of build on themselves too over decades for sure.
It was such a profound documentary. Everyone needs to see it. Dosed. So good.
Ibogaine sounds like a really interesting one. I've heard like there's a lot of like 90% of withdrawal symptoms or something are supposed to be like, but it lasts like a long time too, right? Like
yes, but I think like similar
mushrooms does like 4 to 8 hours maybe.
Yeah. So just like anything else, it depends on the dosage that you take.
Totally,
you could take lower doses and it's not going to last as long. It's not going to be as intense. You could do higher doses, and that's when, as far as mushrooms go, then you're talking about, a full potentially, 5-hour trip, maybe more, depending on how much you take.
Okay.
Now,
ibogaine though is supposed to be like 24 hours or something.
That's too long. I can't commit to 24 hours on anything.
Well, maybe if you were trying to recover from heroin, maybe you might want to go that route. But that was her specific condition, was that her body was so physically addicted, so it needed it badly, and ibogaine was all that helped her. But this ibogaine thing that she did, it was a 10-day like full therapy. So I mean, she went to a home in Canada. She had these healers all around her, helping her every moment. It's a full.
They address like diet and sleep, exercise, some of that kind of stuff too.
She definitely rested a ton,
Nice.
but I am honestly not sure about the diet. I would assume that they address that, but it wasn't talked about that much in the documentary. They were focusing a lot more on the plants and these therapies, like the psychotherapy and everything. And you know, there are definitely underground psychotherapists that are doing these ceremonies and things like what you're talking about, very intention setting, very healing, and you know, you're going in there you know, very mindful. So this is a different category than just I'm going to a concert, so I'm going to take psilocybin. But the thing is, you know, that should be perfectly okay too. Like we go to concerts and we get drunk. Like I think it's kind of silly to be
it's a
like
lot more spiritual with mushrooms
and a lot more
with
connecting.
Oh yeah, for sure. The connect. Yeah. Oh man.
The second time I had mushrooms was at a Grateful Dead concert, and for about 10 years, it didn't occur to me that their guitar chords weren't actually neon chords. But then much later, I was shopping for, you know, guitar cables, and I was like, I wonder if I could get one of those glow in the dark ones like the Grateful. Oh, that's right.
That's funny.
I bet nobody's got glow in the dark guitar cables.
They might, dude. They might.
That's pretty cool.
That was, we were in the second to back row at the Dean Smith Center in North Carolina, and this guy behind me was like, dude, you want a cap? And it was I didn't know what I was getting into at all. It was a wonderful experience.
The little one?
I don't know. It was like maybe, it's hard.
$50 or something?
Yeah. But I don't think you should drive if you're tripping on anything. If you're incapacitated, I don't think you should drive on that. But I don't, you know, for watching the Grateful Dead or walking anywhere, or I mean, I wasn't having some, like, who's that film director, Steven Soderbergh or some. I wasn't having like hallucinations. You know, I was.
There's just some extra sensory stuff going on with what the Grateful Dead was doing. Because like especially the setting can totally like ramp up or like give you not a very like a more difficult experience, even, you know, like even on very low doses. I guess not with like so much microdosing. I've never really had a bad or difficult experience on microdosing. But sometimes, I don't know, like noticing my bad habits can definitely be a little, you know, kind of psychedelic for sure.
Yeah. Well, when I first moved out here, I wasn't in the best of health, and that's when somebody first gave me that. And it would put me to sleep. I'll never forget the first few times I took a nice herbal bath, and I had the music playing and fractals going and laid down and went to sleep.
And then the flashbang came in and SWAT team raided your house and threw you in jail for a felony, right? That's all they're trying to do is just
exactly
decriminalize it. They're not going to put mushroom dispensaries on the streets.
Because I think it's actually pretty hard to grow these things. Like everybody says weed's just a weed and like it grows naturally, which I mean, like, yeah, that's definitely true. But like to cure it and like make good quality medicine is like a difficult process. And so I think mushrooms is kind of even more so with that. And so, you know, if they were watching the hardware stores, or if you're getting spoilers mailed to you or something like that, which is totally legal, you know, they might put you under some sort of like surveillance and try to do that sort of thing if you're just trying to heal yourself. And so, you know, we don't want that. So everybody vote yes by May 7th. 301. All our talking points and stuff on here. It's been fun.
Let's say the FDA has granted breakthrough therapy status to study psilocybin as a treatment for treatment-resistant depression, right? So, and they're doing this at Johns Hopkins and New York University and UCLA, Imperial College of London, and all these studies are suggesting that psilocybin could be potentially a revolutionary treatment for addiction and depression and anxiety. And
it's so interesting addictions on there, because like, that's one of the classifications for Schedule
Yeah.
1.
In order to be on
It's like, wait,
Schedule 1, a
Yeah.
drug has to be highly addictive, have a high potential for abuse, and have no accepted medical value.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they're surely they can't be that long. What's it going to take, like an actual like mushroom pill to be approved by the FDA for them to say it's got medical?
Well,
use?
we already have that with cannabis, and it's still Schedule 1. Then they're doing CBD now too. Because they're like, oh, maybe we missed some of this, and it's not just this sort of thing.
They're not rescheduling CBD again.
Well, I think that they're trying to synthesize, is like do something
They
like
did. It's called Exenol, or what's it called? There's Marinol and I thought it was Exenol or something.
There's like a Sativex spray thing.
Sativex.
But I think that's
GW Pharma.
Across the pond or whatever.
So
It's
how
so
I
crazy.
said the first time I tried, I could feel parts of my brain activating and connecting that weren't doing that before. So when you're breaking this down, where it says, for addiction, depression, anxiety. So a lot of these at the root cause, it's a very rigid way of thinking. Like your brain gets stuck in these patterns and it's very rigid, and it's fueling the depression.
Like the rut in the road,
yes,
sort of thing.
So that is exactly how psilocybin is able to address that, is because when you consume psilocybin and it begins to activate parts of your brain that you weren't using before, and your brain's connecting in ways that it wasn't before, it's creating new neurological pathways. So your frame of thought is maybe a little different, and maybe you have a different perspective. So you notice yourself like, oh, wait a minute, I'm always telling myself these things, these like negative things, this narrative, or and spiraling in that frame of thought, and you can like see that about yourself and like address that about yourself and create new ways of thinking. So that's how it addresses all of those things.
It opens the doors of perception. Is that?
That's what Aldous Huxley totally thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, because it has a lot to do with the connectivity. Like some of the research, they'll do like the scans, the brain scans, and it's like, here's a normal brain, and then here's another brain on psychedelics, and it's all lit up, and it's like
super lit up, and everything's
and it's got
talking.
like a rainbow effect to it too. And I'm like, is that the research saying that, or is that just like the doctor trying to pull a fast one on us? Or what's up with that?
That's what smelling colors looks like on an MRI.
Totally. But yeah, I think this, it's really interesting, the safety. We were talking a little bit about safety on here too, and earlier in the conversation, the Global Drug Survey says it's the safest recreational substance, and they figured that out by doing hospital visits, like amount of hospitalization per capita sort of thing. And it's the lowest out of all recreational substances, whether it's alcohol or tobacco or cannabis or whatever your poison is, so to speak. It's 0.2%.
Yeah, it's the lowest, like by far.
And that's a self-reported study, so there's obviously limitations. Like the people who are going crazy and not coming back from their trips aren't probably doing this survey, but out of the majority of people that are surveyed here, it's so low, and they've been doing this study for a long time. So
Google it. Google the study. Johns Hopkins research. I found it very quickly last night when I was looking for information on that. But this coming Tuesday, May 7th, 2019, Denver voters, get your ballots in. It's
7
too
a.m.
late
to 7 p.m.
It's too late to mail them in now, so you got to drop it off. So go find your ballot location. I'm sure that if you go to decriminalizedenver.org, then you can find that type of information. But all they're saying is people shouldn't go to jail for a fungus any more than they should go to jail for a plant.
Yeah. And something that's really cool about Denver and the way that our initiative process works is people can actually register to vote up until the day of the election. Like you can go to your polling center now, because they have early voting too for the mayoral elections. So you can figure out which one's closest to you right now. I think it's Decriminalize. What's the city website? It's like denvergov.org or something like that. It'll have your polling locations, things like that. You can just go down Register to vote, fill out your ballot, yes on 301. It's super simple, and it's got to be in by 7 p.m. A lot of people have ballots already mailed out, though. They do early voting really good in Denver, so really excited. Fingers
crossed. We'll see how it goes. Get the word out, people. Go get. Just do a little bit of googling on psilocybin mushrooms. They definitely appear to fall into that same category as cannabis, where they were just absolutely lying to us. They were lying to us. Yeah. They weren't lying about PCP, as far as I can tell. Right? They weren't, but they were lying about. They were lying a bunch of stuff. I don't. But mushrooms, I believe, was part of that lie. Go, just don't throw people in jail from it, and just let it go.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, because when you look at the substances that are high toxicity levels that are sending people hospitalized or killing people, it's a lot of, like meth and even alcohol, and it's like, well, alcohol is completely legal and completely normalized, and
alcohol is like the most dangerous.
Yeah,
right?
And so that's just so crazy to think about. Nobody's dying from psilocybin, but that's the one that's so illegal, and that's the one that you risk going to jail for. So the last thing I wanted to note about it is that a lot of people talk about like, oh, but bad trips, like you could have bad trips, those are so terrible. And it's like, in reality, in the grand scheme of things, what we've been doing is taking synthetic medications to numb our feelings or to try to like alter a certain like brain chemical, and what's happened is it's making people feel like zombies, like kind of zombied out, and they just don't feel like themselves. And what's happening is, with the approach of trying to suppress, we're not facing these feelings, we're not facing these things that are going on. And so the idea of a bad trip is just that you're facing these things, and honestly, there's nothing bad about that. Like, you could look at a bad trip as a positive thing because you're learning things about yourself, you're figuring things out about yourself, and you're then going to come through on the other side a better you because you were able to go through all of that. So it's not as though a bad trip is a reason to send people to jail for this or to make this super illegal. That's not a good reason for that. That's a bad
trip.
Like,
exactly. Going to jail and that's happening, definitely.
So we have to stop thinking that, like, feeling these feelings are bad, because they're not. You need to feel the feelings.
Well, on
We're
that,
running short on time, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I have, shortly after noon, I'll be right back on playing Hempire with Andrew from Hempire. And we're gonna learn a lot of new things about the new train feature and competitions and thermostat questions. A lot of nerd Hempire info about ready to get dropped. But I do want to tell people though that vote May 7th. Vote yes on I-301. Go Google it, and maybe we could do something really cool here. And I one way or another, I'm gonna get a T-shirt so I can say.
We'll get you one.
Yeah,
I've been there. I didn't do that because I don't live in Denver, but
you were part of this. You definitely helped this all happen.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
This is huge for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, Alayna, thank you. Tyler, thank you very much.
Thank you, Travis.
Julie, thank you as always.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna flash this off, and we'll be right back on as soon as I get Andrew on Skype, and we're gonna play some Hempire. So thanks for joining, and I guess as always, I'm Travis Lippert telling you, if you don't get hemp here, get hemp somewhere.
Yes.